Alright, so this video will look at finding the surface area of a cone. Um, we've got two formulas here. Okay, so the first formula says that the surface area is pi r squared plus pi times r times L. Okay, so R, first off, R is the radius of the cone. L is the slant height. Okay, it's not the height. The height of the cone is from the radius straight up to the tip of the cone. The slant height is this length right here from the outer edge up to the tip. That's your slant height. Okay, so if you're given a problem with the radius and the slant height of a cone, you'll use this formula. But what if they don't give you the slant height of the cone? What if they give you the height of the cone? Well, that's where this formula comes in. The slant height is equal to pi times r, and then in parentheses r plus the square root of h squared plus r squared, where of course r, that's the radius of the bottom of the cone, and h is the height of the cone. But look at this. Even if you forget this formula and you remember this one, you can still get this one because it's right here when you look at it. Look at this. If we distribute that, then that's going to be what? Pi r squared plus pi r times the square root of h squared plus r squared. Okay? That's if you distribute the pi times r to each term inside the parentheses. Now, look at this. Watch this. Get something. Get that. All right. So if you notice this, you see this triangle here? That is a right triangle. Okay. There's L. Well, this is the hypotenuse, right? So you remember the Pythagorean theorem equals a squared plus b squared. Remember, if you have a right triangle, say that's a, b, and c, c squared is a squared plus b squared. Well, look at this. There's the hypotenuse. So that is what? That's L squared is equal to h squared plus r squared. And then if you square root both sides, that's L is equal to the square root of h squared plus r squared. You see that? So all they did is they took this and they said, you know what? That's L. That's your slant height. Same formula. All they did is they put L in terms of H and R. Okay. So that's that. Okay. They're really the same formula. You're just using different variables to uh, to plug to plug in because you don't have L. You got H and R. Okay. All right. So I got three examples to work for you. So let's take a look at those. All right, so here we go. Find the surface area of the cone whose base radius is 4 centimeters and slant height is 5 centimeters. All right, so we'll just make a quick sketch. Okay, nothing fancy. All right, so they tell us the radius is 4 centimeters and the slant height, so that's that one, that's that distance. So L is 5 centimeters. Okay, so we're going to want to use that first formula that has L in it, the slant height in the formula. So the surface area is pi r squared plus pi r times L. All right, so now we know that the 5, that's going to be plugged in for L, and the 4, the radius, we're going to plug that in for r. So the surface area is pi times the radius squared, so that's 4 squared, plus pi times r, which is 4, times L, which is 5. And so the surface area, that's 4 squared is 16. So 16 pi plus 20 pi. And that's going to give us 36 pi. And that would be, since we're talking about surface area, that's going to be square centimeters. And another way that you could write square centimeters is you could write centimeters squared. Okay. Now we can also take this, punch it into our calculator, and put it as a decimal. So if we punch that in our calculator, we would get 113.1 square centimeters, and that's rounding to 1 decimal place. All right, so let's take a look at another one. All right, so find the surface area of the cone whose base radius is 3 centimeters and height is 4 centimeters. All right, so let's make a sketch. All right, so here I have a radius of 3 centimeters. So the radius is 3 centimeters. And notice it says the height. The height of the cone is this distance. And so that's h is 4 centimeters. So I'm going to use the formula, the other formula that has the h in it. So that is S equals pi r times r plus the square root of h squared plus r squared. And so that would give me, well, let's see, the 4, which is h. We're going to plug that in there, the height. And then the radius, which is 3, we'll plug that here, here, and here. Okay, so the surface area is pi times the radius, all that times the radius plus the square root of h squared, so that's 4 squared, plus r squared, that's 3 squared. And so the surface area would be 3 pi times 3 plus the square root of 16 plus 9. So S is 3 pi times 3 plus the square root of 25. And so S is 3 pi times 3 plus 5. Square root of 25 is 5. So that's 3 pi times 8, which that would be 24 pi. And let's see, that is in centimeters. And so that would be square centimeters. And we could punch this into our calculator. 24 pi rounded to 1 decimal place would be 75.4 square centimeters. All right, so that would be the answer. That would be our answer. This one or this one, depending if you want to leave it in decimal or in terms of pi. Okay. Now, you know, another thing we could do, you see the height and the radius. Okay, the height was 4, the radius was 3. You could use the Pythagorean theorem to calculate L and use the other formula. So you would have L squared equals 4 squared plus 3 squared. So that's L squared is 16 plus 9, which means L squared is 25, and then you square root both sides. So we know the slant height is 5. But look at this. You see that? See where we plugged all that in here? There you go. There's your slant height. So, but you know, it's you could use the other formula if you wanted to. All right, let's take a look at one more. It says find the surface area of the cone whose height is 4 centimeters and slant height is 5 centimeters. Oh, well, let's draw this out. Let's see what they gave us here. All right, so here we have the radius. Well, look at that. We don't know what the radius is, do we? All right, well, and then we have the height, which is 4 centimeters, and then we have the slant height, which is 5 centimeters. Well, if you remember in both formulas, look at both of these formulas here. You have to know the radius. So for this one, we have to actually calculate the radius. Well, remember this. We've got a right triangle here. So this is the hypotenuse. So remember the hypotenuse squared, which is, let me do this in a different color. So the hypotenuse squared is equal to this side squared, which we'll call h, plus this side squared, which is r. So that would be 5 squared if we plug the 5 in for L, equals h squared. Well, h is 4 plus r squared. So that's going to be 25 equals 16 plus r squared. If you subtract 16 to both sides, that gives us r squared is 9. And so then you square root both sides. R equals the square root of 9, which is 3. So that tells us that our radius is equal to 3 centimeters. Okay, so there we had to actually solve for the radius. All right. Now, as far as the formulas go, well, we can actually use either formula. It doesn't matter. Okay. Well, because see, we've got the height, we've got the radius, and we got the slant height, so we can use either formula. Well, I think the first one's easier to use it since we have the slant height. It's not, we don't have to deal with that square root. There's not as much to plug in. So I'm going to use the formula. The surface area is pi r squared plus pi times r times L, the slant height. I'm going to use that formula. So here we have L is 5, and we have the radius. The radius, we're going to plug in the 3. All right, so the surface area is pi times 3 squared plus pi times the radius times the slant height. And so the surface area is 9 pi plus, and that's going to be 15 pi. And so the surface area is 24 pi, and that is, we're in centimeters, so that's going to be square centimeters. Okay, and then if we punch that into our calculator, rounding to 1 decimal place, that would be 75.4 square centimeters. So, just depending on what form your teacher wants it in, you leave it in either form. I know this video was a little bit long, but I wanted to try to hit everything you would come across. So I hope these 3 examples helped. Give me a like, subscribe, and check out my other videos. Thanks for watching.